There is something rather curious about the way in which traveling is spoken about in the modern society. Whether we listen to successful entrepreneurs, influencers, or simply to the conversation that take place among friends and family, we encounter the same idea repeated with remarkable consistency. Travel as much as you can because traveling will change your life. I often wondered how changing geographical location can affect us so profoundly. Perhaps what traveling reveals is not merely something about different countries or cultures, but something much deeper about human nature. I do not believe that traveling possesses some mysterious therapeutic power in and of itself. Rather, I think that our fascination with traveling reveals that modern civilization has gradually deprived us of one of the most fundamental dimensions of what it means to be human. The question, therefore, is not why traveling makes us feel alive, but why so many people require traveling in order to feel alive in the first place. To understand this phenomenon, I think we must begin by asking a different question altogether. Instead of asking why people enjoy traveling, we should ask what kind of creature a human being actually is. Modern society often encourages us to think of ourselves primarily in terms of our profession, our productivity, our economic contributions, but these are all subjective measurement of what a human is. Beneath all these things, there exists something fundamental, our nature. There are certain inclinations that appear so consistent throughout history and across cultures that they tell us something about what we are. Just as hunger reveals that we are creatures who require nourishment and fatigue reveals that we are creatures who require rest, perhaps there are other longings that reveal equally important dimensions of our humanity. I believe that one of these is the desire to explore, to discover, and to encounter the unknown. When I speak about adventure, however, I do not mean that in the Hollywood sense. I'm not referring to climbing Mount Everest or crossing oceans in search of treasure. Adventure, at its deepest level, is simply the encounter with the unfamiliar. It is the experience of stepping beyond what is already known and allowing reality to surprise us, and of discovering something that did not exist in our previous understanding of the world. If we understand adventure this way, it becomes one of the defining characteristics of what a human is. This should not surprise us if we consider the overwhelming majority of human history. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors inhabited environments that constantly demanded curiosity. They crossed unfamiliar landscapes, searched for new sources of water, adapted to changing climates, and gradually spread across an entire planet. Exploration was not an activity reserved for holidays or weekends. It was woven into the fabric of everyday life. Curiosity was not merely an interesting personality trait, but one of the qualities that made survival possible. A tribe willing to explore beyond the familiar valley was more likely to discover fertile land, while one that refused to venture into the unknown eventually exhausted the possibility immediately available to it. If evolution gradually shaped both our bodies and our minds, then it is entirely reasonable to think that this desire for exploration became part of our nature. If this is true, then an important conclusion follows. Human beings are not merely creatures who seek security. We are also creatures who seek discovery. We desire stability, but we are equally drawn toward mystery. This means that any civilization which neglects one of these dimensions will inevitably leave something within us unsatisfied. Every civilization is built around an image of what it believes the human being to be. And if that image is incomplete, then no matter how efficient the civilization becomes, it will inevitably leave some part of human nature unfulfilled. I sometimes wonder whether this is precisely the tension that characterizes modern life. We have constructed society capable of producing extraordinary levels of wealth, comfort, yet many people continue to experience a vague but persistent feeling that something essential is missing. Materially speaking, our lives are more comfortable than those in previous generations, but comfort and fulfillment are not the same thing. We have become remarkably successful at eliminating uncertainty, and while this has spared humanity from countless forms of unnecessary suffering, I wonder whether in removing uncertainty, we also remove something that our minds continue to require. If we assume that human beings possess an innate desire for exploration, then we immediately encounter an uncomfortable tension within the structure of modern economic life. Because the average person now spends 8 or 9 hours each day performing highly repetitive tasks inside environments especially designed to maximize productivity rather than discovery. There is nothing inherently immoral about this arrangement. Every society requires work, organization, and a certain degree of routine. My concern is not that these things exist, but that they have gradually become the dominant principle according to which almost every aspect of our lives is organized. The modern workplace values efficiency, repetition, optimization, and measurable output because these qualities are necessary for economic productivity. Yet productivity and human flourishing are not identical concepts. This is closely related to an idea that I explored in my previous videos, namely that the workplace often relates to the individual primarily as an economic resource or unit rather than a complete human being. I have also wondered whether the environments we inhabit contribute to this feeling more than we usually realize. Nature almost never produces perfectly straight lines. Rivers curve, mountains resist symmetry, and branches twist in unpredictable direction that continually rewards our attention. The modern cities we have constructed, by contrast, are dominated by straight roads, rectangular buildings, office cubicles, identical corridors, and repetitive geometric patterns. Again, there is not something inherently wrong with straight lines, but I think spending most of our lives inside environments designed almost exclusively for functionality inevitably shapes our psychology. We are embodied creatures after all, and it would be strange indeed if the space within which we spend the majority of our lives had no influence upon the way we experience the world. This also explains, I think, why traveling occupies such a privileged place in the modern culture. People often imagine that they travel simply to rest, but I suspect they are searching for something much deeper. Traveling interrupts routine. It introduces uncertainty, novelty, unfamiliar landscapes, and the possibility of discovery. It temporarily restores a dimension of the human existence that everyday life frequently suppresses. Notice too how children behave whenever they encounter an unfamiliar environment. Give a child a forest, an empty field, a winding path, and they instinctively begin exploring. Nobody teaches them to look behind the next tree or climb the nearest hill. Curiosity emerges naturally because exploration belongs to the structure of the human mind. Perhaps adulthood does not eliminate this instinct as much as it gradually suppresses it beneath routines, obligations, and responsibilities. The explorer never entirely disappears, he simply receives fewer opportunities to express himself. This is why I do not think that the real lesson is that we should travel more, although there is certainly nothing wrong with traveling. Traveling is not a solution, it is a symptom. It reveals that there remains within us an enduring desire for adventure that ordinary life no longer satisfies. The more important question is now not how often we should escape, but why so many people feel that they must periodically escape from the ordinary structure of their own lives in order to feel fully human. Perhaps then, the challenge before us is not to abandon civilization, but to humanize it. A civilization should not merely ask how to maximize productivity, but also to cultivate the whole person. It should leave room for beauty as well as utility, for contemplation as well as labor, and for adventure as well as security. Otherwise, we risk creating a world that functions remarkably well, but leaving many of people within it with a persisting feeling that something essential has been forgotten. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.